Hey guys, welcome back to Reserved Investments with the cure for all your antique and collectible worries. So today, what we're going to talk about is the difference between collector-driven markets versus investor-driven markets in the antiques and collectibles trade. Now, this is such a profound trend that we really need to comment on this because a lot of you out there don't seem to realize that some of you are being misled by market manipulators and sophisticated investors. And a lot of that comes down to how you analyze these markets. So I'm going to begin with a little story about coin collecting, and then we're going to merge into pop culture collectibles and how these markets are defined, whether we're talking about collector-driven markets or investor-driven markets. So as a lot of you are aware, I do invest and like to diversify in rare coins and high-end graded currency. I predominantly usually bid on heritage auctions. I am also registered through Stacks and Bowers. I love both auction houses. On top of that, I do tend to work with a small network of high-profile dealers that I rely on for information. And also, if they get something that they know I'm interested in, they'll put it aside for me. We'll talk on a regular basis. Well, I've really been getting headstrong into the wonderful auction world as of late, especially when the pandemic hit, because I had a little bit more time on my hands. So the last few heritage auctions that catered to both coins and currency, I have been involved in, and I noticed an interesting trend. Certain pieces I was going after, there was very high demand. I was literally forced to bid more if I wanted those particular items. And now, within the past month, I can tell you, I have been getting bid out of the water. Meaning there's people coming in that are willing to pay what I consider to be a ridiculous price for some of these coins or for some of these pieces of currency, to the point where I can get them at a cheaper price just by working with well-known, high-profile dealers in the trade that I already have a relationship with. So when it gets to that point, I pull back from auctions, I contact my dealer network, and I go, hey guys, I need a favor. I'm looking for this item. Or hey, you have this particular CAC coin on your website. I would like to buy this. Can you work with me? Can we come up with a deal here? And a lot of these high-profile dealers have done business with me before. So interestingly enough, I'm not going to state the coin that I'm looking for, but I was looking for a very expensive proof gold coin that was CAC stickered, that was in one of the heritage auctions that I was bidding on that I missed out on. A dealer has it in their inventory, and the coin looks brilliant. So I usually call this dealer, and I leave him a message, and within 24 to 48 hours, he calls me back, and we talk a little bit, and we work out a deal on the coin that I'm looking to buy. So this particular instance, I called this guy Monday morning, and I said, hey, you have a coin on your site. This is a very high-profile, well-known dealer. I'm not going to state his name. I said, I'm really interested in this coin. Give me a call back. We've worked together before. It's Sean from Boyertown, Pennsylvania. Well, 24 hours is going by. He never called me back. 48 hours is going by. He didn't still call me back, which I thought was very odd because usually when we work together, it's a very fluid transaction. I either send him a check, I use my credit card, I pay right away, he gets the coin to me, and it's as good as done. And it's easy money for him. It's an easy transaction for me. So 72 hours goes by. I'm still not getting a call back from this high-profile dealer. So 96 hours, day 4, I pick up the phone and I call him back. And finally, he answers the phone because I called him during office hours this time. And I said, hey, it's Sean. And he said, oh, Sean, I'm so sorry I didn't get back to you sooner. He says, I have been swamped. And he takes a deep breath. And he pauses. Now, you got to remember, this guy's in his 70s at this particular point. He's been involved in the coin marketplace for decades. He knows his stuff in and out. Takes a deep breath, and he says, it's happening again, man. And I said, dude, what are you talking about? I just want to buy my coin. And he says, Sean, we're heading into an investor-driven coin marketplace. And right when he said that, a light bulb went off in my head. And I said, you know what? I started a YouTube channel, And I have yet to do a video on that topic that applies to antique markets and or collecting categories, because the whole pop culture marketplace at present time is dominated by nothing but investor-driven collectors, speculators, and the like. So I really have to do a video on this. So we get talking, and he says, Sean, I just want to vent a little bit because I have a working relationship with you. And the phone call lasts 20 minutes. And he starts telling me some of the stupid things that people are doing with their money because they're worried about the pandemic, the effect on the financial markets, the economy as a whole. He is so busy right now. He has people calling him that wants to buy $20,000 worth of silver bullion, $20,000 worth of gold bullion. He had a guy who never even collected coins before that went on his website, clicked the buy button on a $25,000 proof gold coin. When he got the order, he literally picked up the phone and called the guy and said, hey, I don't recognize your name, and you just spent $25,000 on a coin without even talking to me to see if you could get a better price. Are you sure you want to pay this for this item? And the guy literally told him, put it in a box and send it to me. I don't trust the economy as a whole right now. So what we're seeing, guys, is insanity in certain markets. So what does this have to do with collector-driven markets versus investor-driven markets in the antiques and collectibles trade? Well, certain markets like coins, like currency, like firearms, like certain markets on the antique side of the trade go in predictable cycles. What we're seeing now is a return to investor-driven markets in some of these more established and mature antique market collecting categories like coins, currency, to name a few. Now, on the other side of the equation, when we look at pop culture collecting categories like vintage video games, graded video games, comic books, Magic the Gathering cards, Pokemon cards, even certain, not all, but certain categories of vintage toy collecting, they're also being dominated at present time by an investor-driven market. So now that we're 7 minutes into this video, I want to ask a question for all of you. And be honest, how many of you have ever said to yourself, you know, I enjoy collecting video games or Magic the Gathering cards or Pokemon cards or even comic books, but I liked it a lot better like 10, 20, maybe 25 years ago if we're talking about comic books, when prices were so much cheaper. If you've ever caught yourself saying that, that is a desire to go back to a collector-driven marketplace as opposed to the current marketplace environment that we're in that are dominated by investors and or speculators. Now, this is something that everybody gets wrong when they analyze these markets. A lot of these markets that I just stated, vintage video games, graded video games, Magic the Gathering, Pokemon cards, comic books, certain subsets of the vintage toy category, they are in what is known as an investor-driven marketplace at present time. But what people don't realize, that doesn't mean that all the investors operating in that collecting category are sophisticated investors. You've got speculators in that pool. You've got Timmies in that pool. You've got Poindexters in that pool. You've got market manipulators in that pool. And yes, you got the top 1% of the people who are able to afford to pay $100,000, $200,000, $250,000, $500,000 in some cases for one item. That's the way these markets work. You must be very, very careful if you yourself are investing in an investor-driven collecting market and not understanding the risks or the advice that you are listening to, guys. There's a lot of people that come on my channel, and some of these comments, I hate to say it, guys, they end up in the YouTube spam filter. There's a lot of people that are very unhappy with this particular YouTube channel because I'm probably the only person out there that talks about market manipulation, that gives examples of market manipulation, that tells you guys to be careful, use cautious, caution and have a written plan before entering some of these speculative markets that we're seeing accelerate in value at present time. Whether we're talking about Pokemon, Magic the Gathering, comic books, video games, grade it or not, you must use common sense. A lot of people out there are following these market manipulators, these market leaders, these market makers blindly, thinking that, well, obviously, if that guy over there is buying a sticker-sealed copy of Super Mario Brothers and he's willing to pay 6 figures, I'm okay over here paying $3,000, $4,000, or $5,000 for this lesser-known Nintendo game that's graded by WADA, because those markets are equivalent. Those markets are not equivalent. It's the same overall collecting category, and both ends of the market are being driven by investors. But the difference is what type of investor is driving the purchase price. The items that is accelerating in value the most right now are being driven by auction houses, market manipulators, and market makers. And again, my wording of that, it should not be taken in any way as an insult to those participants. Auction houses provide an excellent service overall. They sometimes cross the line when they get into shady promoting of some of these collecting categories. I agree there. But overall, reputable auction houses do an excellent service to both collectors, sellers, buyers, dealers, and investors on a regular basis. Looking at the other side of the spectrum, you have market manipulators. Market manipulators, by their own definition, are not inherently evil, guys. I hate to say that. They are looking at this market as a totally free market, which is really what the antiques and collectibles trade. It is overall, with few exceptions, I'm not going to talk about the exceptions in this video, an unregulated market that exists in purest form. Meaning you can come in, if you have enough money, if you have enough understanding of economics, finance, how these markets work, you can manipulate them. On the other side of that spectrum, you have what I call the market movers. A market mover is somebody who has a very high net worth. We're talking people with net worths of 5, 10, 15, 20, $50 million, where if they spend $500,000 on an item, it's really not going to faze them, guys. So they can pay a lot for these top tier collectibles and move the market in such a manner that the little Timmy speculators, they look at it and they go, that market's on fire. I got to get in there. I have FOMO, fear of missing out. And what does little Timmy S. Poindexter Jr. do? He reaches into his wallet and he pulls out his Amex card. And he says, you know what? I'm going to do it. I'm going to pull the trigger, Sean. I'm going to get that $5,000 or $10,000 video game, and I'm going to put it on my shelf. And everybody looks at him and goes, dude, you don't have a pot to piss in, but yet you have a $10,000 video game on your shelf. What the hell are you doing? And what does little Timmy S. Poindexter Jr. do? Well, that guy over there, he just paid $150,000 for that item. I want to be like him. And anybody who is educated in economics and finance will look at little Timmy S. Poindexter Jr. and go, dude, do you really think putting a $10,000 unproven speculative item on a credit card is going to move you closer to being like that guy? Anybody can see the danger brewing. The fact that little Timmy at some point is probably going to have to take a loss on that item to pay back what he owes on that credit card, to say the least. And even if little Timmy had $10,000 in cash, if he wasn't financially established yet, he should not be going after an item that he cannot realistically afford. So the point of this video is just to alert you guys that there's a lot of investor-driven markets on the pop culture side of the trade at present time, and even in certain instances on the antique side of the trade. When we talk about coins, currency, firearms, collectible firearms, and edge weapons is growing by leaps and bounds. I mean, I'm looking at completed auction listings for a lot of that stuff, and even me, I'm worried for that market at present time, even more so than coins and currency. That market is on fire. I'm going to have to do more videos on this channel devoted to collectible firearms, edged weapons, and the like, because that market is really heating up. It scares me. I mean, it's the equivalent of ancient coins in coin collecting right now. Ever since NGC started grading ancient coins, that's another market that's on fire at present time. And it is insane. It shows no signs of slowing down or stopping. Pieces that you could have gotten literally a year or two ago are now selling for 100% or more on the marketplace. It's insane. So a question that I always get asked when I talk about collector-driven markets versus investor-driven markets, Sean, can you give an example of a collector-driven market? The answer is yes. If you look at Pez collecting right now, Pez collecting is the perfect example of a collector-driven marketplace. Pez collecting, the investment element, has been removed from that market now for about 10, 20 years. You can still make money in that market. There is still like the top 1 to 3% of that market that is brewing. But overall, in my opinion, Pez collecting is dying. Future generations are not going to be drawn to Pez collecting. The financial element has been removed from that market, and that market, unfortunately, is not cyclical. You can't compare Pez dispenser collecting to coins, currency, firearms, antiques, or even what I would consider speculative markets like graded video games, Magic the Gathering, or Pokemon. As a result, the people that are collecting Pez dispensers right now are predominantly collectors. It's not being driven by investors, guys. So in all fairness, if you want to park money in that market for a financial return, it's not worth it. The market is not cyclical, meaning it's not going to come back around, in my opinion. So if you are buying this stuff to invest in, you do have to either go after some of these more hardcore cyclical investor-driven markets. And to be fair, coin collecting, currency collecting goes through cycles. At certain cycles, it's collector-driven. At other cycles, it's investor-driven. Coins and even currency, to a lesser extent, have an inverse relation with the stock market, the financial markets, and the economy as a whole. Those markets are cyclical. For instance, if we go back 2-3 years ago, 2016, 2015, 2017, pick your year, the stock market was going haywire. At that particular point, the coin collecting marketplace was in a collector-driven market. Investors were not operating fundamentally in that market because they said, you know what? I'm going to put my money over here in the stock market because I can get a higher return. And if I want to buy an investment grade coin or a rare coin, I'll do that with the dividends and the money I'm going to make in the stock market. That's the primary difference. The problem that you have brewing in the collectibles and the pop culture collecting realm at present time is you have too many unsophisticated speculators who think they are investors operating in those market pools, thinking that they're going to outsmart the market manipulators, the market makers, the auction houses, and the other people who are educated in economics and finance, who know these markets like the back of their hands. That's the problem that we are having right now in pop culture collectibles. And I'm going to be very honest with you guys. It is a powder keg. And eventually, some of those markets are going to fall. Some of them are going to stabilize. And yes, I'm going to say it, some of them are going to even go up higher. But the average Timmy out there who is just following the trend, thinking that he's going to make money in those markets, is sorely mistaken because he does not understand the basic fundamentals as to how markets in the trade are either collector dominated or they are investor dominated. They cannot be both, guys. They are either one or the other. Either there is massive amount of collectors operating in that market, or there is a massive overall amount of investors operating in that market. One quick point before I end this video. If you look at what's happening with all these fractional share collectible companies coming onto the market, like Otis Investments, Mythic Markets, that want to sell you shares of an Incredible Hulk 181, a Black Lotus Alpha Edition card from Magic the Gathering, first edition Charizard foil card from Pokemon. Where do you think that's coming from? That's coming from the wannabe investors that are priced out of the market from a lot of these market makers, market manipulators, auction houses, and even some of the Timmies out there that are competing against themselves to get into these markets. It's causing demand to spill over, where now we have companies taking an illiquid asset, which is what an antique and collectible is, making it even more illiquid. And some of you guys out there are, I hate to say it, are stupid enough to go after shares or fractional shares of a comic book, of a Pokemon card, of a vintage video game, of a Magic the Gathering card, without any understanding as to why it's occurring and how these markets work. Thank you for watching. I hope you have a great night. If this content interests you, please consider liking or subscribing this video or subscribing to this channel. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Thanks, guys.